so forgive me for that. But I do it on purpose because we're after lunch, and I was just saying at my table, man, that cookie's got me feeling a little down here, right? So thanks for having me. Andrew just walked out. He and Mike Birdie in the back, we've been talking about this for a number of months, and just hearing about the evolution of personalized learning in Competency, Michigan is really exciting. I actually live in Maine, but I grew up in California, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But let's get things started because it is after lunch, and I did present, I forget the Michigan Association of Federal Program, am I getting that right? Services Officers? What is it, Mike? Something like that. Maths. I presented at Maths, and people found out that I'm a bit infamous for what I like to do. I like engagement is a big part of the presentations. So I fully expect participation. So just so you know, putting it out there, but it'll be group participation. So here's the first question to you all. So which start would you like? Would you like the fun version? Or would you like the food coma to begin version? Which version would you like? So we're all about agency here, right? It's part of personalized learning. You got to develop some agency and a culture of that. So I'm leaning heavily. I hope you pick the one that I want. Which one? If you want the food coma version, please raise your hand. A couple of hands. Okay, good. If you want the fun version, please raise your hand. If you have no idea what you're getting into, please raise your hand. And you're still voted. Some of you didn't vote at all, so that's good. All right, so we're going to go with the fun version, but I need two people to help me out with this fun version. Two brave souls, and no, Mike, not somebody that you voluntold ahead of time. I need two brave souls. Thank you, sir. What's your name? Jeff from? I figured that, Jeff. Okay, he's not gonna. Jeff, come on up. Great. I need one more person. Actually, if we could have one of our gentle ladies come up here, that would be awesome. Thank you. Come on up. What's your name? Kim. Kim. All right. So, Jeff, give them a round of applause, please. So as Kim and Jeff are coming up to kickstart us, before I forget, because I have to, here's my card. I left my Knowledge Works swag in my car at the airport. So email me and I'll make sure it gets to you, okay, for participating. All right, so a lot of the work that you all have been talking about this morning and this afternoon or have been engaged in for X amount of time, you know this work is hard, right? And sometimes it's kind of like lifting a mountain, right? It's like overcoming this mountain. Laura earlier had her visuals, and you're like, that really feels, not just that it's a beautiful landscape, but sometimes it feels like that's what you have to overcome, right? So Jeff and Kim are gonna help lead us, but you're gonna help lead all of us. So everyone, I need everyone to stand up for the fun version, please. Everyone stand up for the fun version. And for those of you that will get to know me, I'm a big fan of karaoke. So join Jeff and Kim in kickstarting our work here, because in personalized learning, hold on. Pause. How do I get sound? How do I get higher sound? Andrew, where are you? Arrow. Okay, tech person, Andrew, thank you so much. Don't. Which one?
Trying it.
Help me out. And
I got all the volume I can get. Is yours cranked up?
Mine's cranked up. Ready?
Yeah.
Are we ready? Okay, here we go. That's only mine. Hold on. Okay, help sing with the, come on, ready? If you need me, call me.
No matter where you are, no matter how far, don't
Call my name, I'll be there in a hurry. You don't have to worry. Little arms. Ain't no valley low enough. Ain't no river wide enough to keep me from getting to you, babe. Well, hey, I'm already heating up, Jeff. I'm heating up. No mountain high. We can do the chorus. Ain't no valley low enough. Ain't no river wide enough to keep me from getting to you, babe. Oh no, darling. On me, baby. Hold on, here we go. Going together. Yeah, oh yeah. They're supposed to be singing. Ready? My love is alive, way down in my heart. Blah, 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 blah. Because baby, there we go. No, I can do this one. Ain't no valley low enough. Ain't no river wide enough to keep me from getting to you, babe. Let's end with that. Give them a round of applause. Awesome. Shoo. Awesome. So let's just hope the swag I send you, you go, that's it for getting up in front of my peers. So thanks for the warm up. Hopefully everyone's blood is kicking a little bit, and that sugar and that digestive system isn't going to keep us from learning here. So thank you, Jeff and Kim. You guys were awesome. So let me tell you a little bit about who I am. These are my two kiddos. Tracy, you referenced yours earlier. These are mine. I have Pierce on the right and Maya on the left. And Tim from Big Rapids, I don't know, Tim, are you in the room, or you might be elsewhere? Tim, you shared a great story in the last session just about your kids, and so and how how personalized learning and competency. I'm out of breath. Jeez, are we at altitude? Or is it just me? I'm just out of shape. I'm out of shape. Okay, remind me to go for a run, Mike, before we go to dinner, please. I need to get better at this. I too kind of came to the realization around personalized learning. It really became real, even though this work for me started a long time ago. It really became real for the first time when my own kids started school, right? And Maya, she's the queen of compliance. If you tell her she did something wrong or she could have done something better, she's gonna do everything she possibly can to remedy the situation. I can do this. I got it. Okay, what else can I do? It's always, what else can I do? With Pierce, he's a king of breaking things. And he really doesn't care about you, right? Who was a young man you referenced, Laura? Ivan. He says, you don't matter. Well, Pierce tells me that every day. Dad, I really don't care what you say. He's his own spirit. Very tough. He's going to do it his way, right? But he's also very persistent, for now in mostly negative ways. But I'm hoping that persistence will transform itself for good later on. But it's clear as a father, though my kids come from the same parents, same household, same loving families and friends, they're two totally different kids. And yet our school systems are set for the same exact kid, right? And that for me, even though I'd been in this work for a decade before my kids were born, that's really when it hit home. Right? I started as a teacher. I started in New Hampshire and Massachusetts. I went to UMass and started teaching in Massachusetts and New Hampshire schools, and I was a terrible teacher. I was awful, right? I did all the things that all my other teachers did, and so I just kind of fell into, hey, teach chapter 1, do the test at the end of the week, go to chapter 2 the following week. I thought I was pretty cool and engaging, as a young teacher. I thought I was doing fun stuff, but really it was me doing fun stuff and the kids just kind of going through the motion. But I had the real pleasure, so this is all before NCLB and credentials, and there were some state credentials, but most states didn't have credentials at the time. And I had a New England teaching credential. I moved to California, which is where I grew up. I went home for family reasons, and the state of California says, I'm sorry, Virgil, your credential's no good here. We don't have reciprocity with New England or any of the states you serve. I said, oh, that's great. So I have this graduate degree in education, so I can only apply to classified positions. So I was very fortunate, now that I think about it in hindsight, I was very fortunate to meet this learning community in Lindsay, California, where they said, you know what, we see what you've done, we see your experience, but we can only hire you as a migrant aide, a migrant student aide. Will you take it as you go through your credentialing courses? I said, I don't think I have an option. So sure, I'll take it. And it was a great experience for me because I got to know about what true instruction, teaching, and learning look like, right? I was working with kiddos that were new to the country. English was a second language. The whole idea of stand and deliver was not going to work for them. Right? So it was a great, now in hindsight, a real blessing that that the credential process was as screwed up as it was back then. Eventually, I became a teacher in Lindsay. Had a great opportunity learning from amazing educators and colleagues that pushed me and continue to inspire me and empower me to try new things. And that led to a vice principalship and ultimately in a separate district. And actually, I became a vice principal at the high school where that I attended, which is a lot of fun to do evaluations of your former teachers. Really interesting, dynamic, almost as interesting as scoring your own boys, I guess, in class. But that led to coming back to getting a call, and the superintendent at Lindsay said, hey, do you want to come back home? And the really cool thing is she said, do you want to come back home? That sounded great. Even though I was working and serving in the high school that I attended, and I was in a great place and I loved it, the whole idea of coming home and serving Lindsay kids and a community that had helped me so much and my family when we came to this country was really felt good. And so interviewed, they took a chance at a first-year principal. And the really interesting part is, I'll try not to go into too many stories, but NCLB at this time was fully in place, and much like in Michigan and all states, if you hadn't achieved enough growth in your school, what was one of the very first things that most states did? Reassign the principal or cut the principal. Almost the very first thing. So Lindsay High School, where I was a principal, the scores were in the toilet. We were ranked #1 in the state out of 10. The problem is #1 means you're the worst. It said, hey, I'm sorry, you have to remove your principal. And so the superintendent says, he's just been here for 2 weeks. He's not a part of the problem. We're hoping he's a part of the solution. So the state said, great, you get a year. Figure it out. And then you have to make a decision about the principal, whether he or she's going to be a fit. So talk about that later. Eventually became a superintendent. In Maine, in Lindsay, we really aspired to learn from other successful learning communities. And as we were going across the country, kind of learning and picking the brain of other people that are super innovative, we met this learning community in Maine and named Regional School Unit 2, which is really kind of a shallow name. RSU 2. And RSU 2 had just gone through through consolidation because the governor at the time said, hey, there are too many districts in Maine. Doesn't make sense. Let's consolidate school districts. So they went from 5, excuse me, I should know my own district. Went from 5 independent towns to 1 school district. And they were a couple of years old, and they were very purposeful in trying to create alignment between the 5 towns. So I've heard multiple times today, local control, local control, local control. Well, imagine 5 different localities coming together as one. It was a forced marriage. It was not pretty in the beginning, but they had the wherewithal to engage those 5 communities and say, how do we take the best of what each of our communities do and deliver it to all? Really smart. And they'd gone through a great strategic design process. And my wife being from Massachusetts, I came back home and I said, hey, hon, I found this great learning community. Maybe that's the one that later we can look at and explore and see if they'll we can go there. Maybe they'll hire me as a principal. And in my head, I'm saying it's also far enough away from the outlaws in Massachusetts that they can't just surprise us. A few months later down the road, I get a call from the superintendent and says, hey, have you ever thought about being a superintendent? I said, oh, geez, I was really kind of going to call you to see if you want a new principal, but well, I don't know. Let's figure this out. Again, they take a shot. Became a superintendent. I'll talk a little bit about that in a bit, but my best responsibility besides being a father and a husband is really being a learner. In fact, that's a big part of when I came to KnowledgeWorks, they said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, really, I want to learn from educators across the country and across the world. And then I want to help others to replicate those best practices and the successful strategies that others have utilized. I want to support that. And so our leader at KnowledgeWorks said, well, then great, you're our chief learning officer, go figure it out. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. What are people across the country doing? How are they putting these conditions in place to help support personalized learning and competency at the systems level, and how do they make that real at the classroom level? So I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. So I'm only going to talk about KnowledgeWorks in this one slide, I think. So for us, we truly believe that 3 meta themes need to exist in your learning community. There has to be a sound, strong vision that everything is aligned to. Everything is aligned to that vision. I heard a few strategies today in the last couple of days just here in Michigan where people actually make board decisions and align it to that vision or the guiding principle aligned within that vision. Super smart. Okay? Culture. Oftentimes that culture for innovation needs to exist. It has to be in place. Without culture, it all crumbles. So you have to be very purposeful in developing and designing that culture. And the last one is transparency. If you're doing this in isolation, it also will crumble. It's really easy as educators when we're doing really innovative things, and in Lindsay and in RSU2, when we're bucking trends and innovating new things, I always wanted to pull the shades on our school and say, never mind, it's business as usual. Ignore us. But it was really interesting when we sprung that spring on that shade to see what innovation and what ideas came from the community and from our kids. So vision, culture, and transparency. And those 3 all exist within 10 conditions. And I'll send this to Andrew, who can forward it out so you guys have it. But for us, we will never say this is step 1 and this is step 3,000. We will say that the 3 meta themes need to exist within 10 conditions in your district if you want to make personalized learning and competency viable and sustainable. Okay? No matter who the leader or who the teacher is in the classroom. And our role, and Laura, you heard a lot about Laura's journey, and Tracy highlighted Laura quite a bit. We have Laura's across the country that support the realization of these conditions. How they are real in Jeff's learning community and how they are real in Kim's learning community might be entirely different. But what matters is it's alive and successful under their context. So we actually have, if you're curious, it's totally free. And I'll put, again, this is in the, I'll send the slide deck out. But we just released a personalized learning self-assessment. It's on our website. Here's the link if you get it really quickly. But it's 4 questions. How ready is your district to support personalized learning? Take it. And the really cool thing that comes from it, totally not designed by me. This is all our team. That's pretty amazing. You take this I think it's 4 questions, Laura, 4 questions. And based on those 4 questions, it just gives you a general overview. Based on how you responded, here are some things to consider as next steps. Oh, and here, by the way, are some resources that you can explore. Take a look, read, have fun. Let us know what you learn. And if we can support, let us know. So I have been talking way too long, and you guys know that I like to do engaging strategies. So here's what I need. I need you have yellow sticky notes on your tables. Split your table in half if all chairs are filled. And each half, give yourself 9 different sticky notes. Number each sticky note with one number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 9 sticky notes with each number on it.
We're doing 9. You guys are doing 9?
We only need 2 sets of 9. 2 sets of 9. Okay, I'm going to do it myself.
We did. You counted them off. Yeah, I was going to say that was pretty good estimate. Yeah.
There's our 9.
Thank you.
All right. So everyone select your side of the table. You're going to support that side of the table. We're going to get a little bit of a design challenge right now. Okay. Going to give you something to go home with that you can practice with your own kids or with your own teacher kids. Little design challenge. Put us in the right frame of mind. Okay. So we're going to talk about some jars. So I'm too cheap to get my kids piggy banks. So we do money jars in our house. Plus, they like to see it fill up and all that kind of great stuff. So we're going to play with some magic number jars, and I'm going to ask you to think through this very simple numeracy task. Raise your hands if you can add. Anyone can add single-digit numbers? Wonderful. Thank you for doing little this. That's good. All right, so I need someone other than Jeff and Kim to volunteer. You can stay at your seat too. You don't no dancing, no anything. Can I get a volunteer? Thank you, sir. What's your name? Mitch. All right, Mitch. I have 2 number jars. Okay, and our goal is to put all 9 stickies, divide them within both jars. Okay, that to be able to fit in both jars. But there's some catch. But I'm not going to give you all the rules right now. Okay. So, Mitch, where would you like the number 1? Left side. Here? All right. Oh, crud. All right. Hold on. Will it stick? No. Okay, check and adjust. Here we go. It's not at all like the classroom. Tracy, you're a lifesaver. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right, Mitch, where would you like 2 to go? Right side. All right, Tracy, right side, please. How about number 3, Mitch?
Go back to the left side.
Why'd you go back to the left?
The odds on the left, on the right. It's not that they can make a decision. I'm probably going to rip it.
I have no idea what you just said. But you said 3 because you want odds on that side. All right. So 1, 3, okay. All right. So 4, you want over here because, again, evens on that side? Okay, cool. Thank you, Miss Tracy. So 5, you want back over there? Okay, all right. Again, going odds. All right, you can do this. So far, you don't know any of the rules, but so far, you're in good shape. So 1, 3, 5, that works in here. 2 and 4, that works in here. All right. So 6, you want where again? In the evens? Right side, all right. Okay, so here's our first challenge, Mitch. 6 cannot, just doesn't fit here. It's just not going to work. And the reason it's not going to work, Mitch, is because the first rule of Fight Club, no, just kidding. The first rule of magic number jars is no 2 numbers within a jar can add up to a second number in that jar. Okay, I didn't tell you that though, Mitch. So your thinking was very sound and logical. So that's not going to work here. Okay, so again, checking for understanding. What is rule number 1, class? No 2 numbers can add up to another number in that jar. So your task is to try to get all 9 numbers. Oh, you know what? Make 2 columns because again, I'm ill-prepared here. 2 columns on in your table. So pretend you have 2 jars on your table. Put all 9 numbers in those 2 jars, remembering rule number 1. Ready? I'll give you, when you know it, please raise your hand, or you have the answer, please raise your hand, and I'll give you 2 minutes. If you know the answer, don't give it away. Just raise your hand. Do 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 do. No, no two numbers can add up to another number in that jar. We figured it out. Any hands? All right, Kennewa folks in the back, you think you've got it? I don't know if I can get back to you, but I'll try. Pardon me, you're good, you're good. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Sorry, excuse me. Okay, I'm coming to you next. Except 3 and 5 makes 8. Right, and 3 and 4 makes 7. Okay, you think you got it? All right. Let's see, 3. Okay, hold on. Let me do this one. 4, 2, 1. Okay, let me see this other one. 6 and 3 make 9. All right, all right. Final 30 seconds. Anyone have it? Let's see. First rule. Let's see. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1 plus 2 is 3, 1 plus 4, 5, 9 plus 2, 8 plus 1. 8 plus 1 is 9. All right, all right. So most of you are within 1. All right. If we can bring it all back. Excuse me. All right. So, all right. Anyone get really far? You're like, oh, that last number. Yeah. All right. Who thinks they got the furthest along the way that'd like to walk us through it? I heard over here, your table. Okay, no, you didn't get there. All right. So let me give you another hint. And then I'll give you 30 seconds to try to solve it because this hint's going to give it away. So what if you added a third jar? All right, 30 seconds. Can you do it with the third jar? Ready, set, go. Yeah. Raise your hand when you've got it. Raise your hand when you've got it. Got it, got it, got it. Good. We're seeing hands all over the place. All right. Awesome. So let me just completely tick you off now. 1 through 9 with 2 jars is impossible. So which for Maya, when we practice numeracy, she's like, did I do it wrong? Right? That's my daughter, Maya. Did I do it wrong, Daddy? Did I do it wrong? It's just about practicing numeracy. With my son, it's, why'd you do that to me? And then runs out the door, right? But really, what the purpose for today of having you, because I obviously know you know how to do math and basic addition, but really, when we're talking about personalized learning and competency, sometimes you need to introduce a number of new variables that perhaps we hadn't considered. And the real challenge for you is that we grew up in the traditional system where there were always 2 jars and the numbers always fit. And when we try to be innovative, it's really hard not to try to squeeze them into 2 jars. So let me give you an example. This goes back hundreds of years, right? Not just our educational system goes back 100+ years, but the idea of innovation and challenging new ideas and practices goes back forever. So let me give you an example of that. So this is a real sad, oh shoot, hold on, Mr. Washington, let me take these off of you. Woo. So this is Mr. Washington's last days. And so Mr. Washington, some of you might know him as our first president. So this is President Washington. He's working at Mount Vernon. He starts to feel ill. And he's the president, right? So of course the president gets the best care there is in the country. The best that there is. And so the doctors are all there, the best of the best, right, are there, and they're saying, what can we do for President Washington? He's feeling sick. And so the top innovation at that time for medicine, does anyone know? Bloodletting. So President Washington is super sick. And so the doctors say, well, we got to release some of these toxins that are in his blood. So we'll do some bloodletting. Day goes by, he gets worse. Right? He gets worse. And so they go, okay, let's think about this. So he complained of a sore throat. And now today he has chills and he has a huge fever. Let's think about this. What's the next step? What was the next step? More bloodletting. Right? And so day 3 comes around. Now he doesn't just have a sore throat, doesn't feel kind of achy, but now he's not really responding. So the best doctors in the country said, what? More bloodletting. Right? And he didn't die from the blood. He ultimately had an infection and he had that came from. And so, but the whole point is sometimes we get caught up in our traditional paradigms that even when we think we're doing the very best, we need to release that old mindset and be willing to think entirely differently. And that's extremely hard to do in isolation, which is why the beauty of this convening, Andrew and Mike and everyone else who helped convene this piece and all of you sharing your insights, that's what's so brilliant, right? The last session, I heard about Kenoa's journey. People saying, oh, I hadn't thought of that, right? And others in another session, I'm reading these notes going, oh, that's a really cool idea, right? So that's the real challenge when we're talking about personalized learning and competency. It's extremely difficult work because we have this system that's completely based on moving kids based on their age and developed around an agrarian calendar where, hey, whenever the crop is ready to be harvested, that's when we break. Now, if you grew up in Central Valley, California, like I did, agriculture is a huge part of making the economy tick there. But the rest of the country, not so much. So how do we think differently about how we can do teaching and learning? So I'm going to talk more about what's happening. But let's first talk about the definition. And many of you have already hinted at this, but personalized learning competency definition. So kids advance in profound mastery, not seat time. And so many of you have said they go at their own pace. I'm going to challenge, here's your first challenge. It's not about kids going at their own pace. It's about how do we set the conditions to accelerate learning based on their zone of proximal development. How do we accelerate learning, not allow kids to go at their own pace? Because guess what? You're going to have a lot of Pierces in your classroom. And Pierce, much like what we experienced in Lindsay and in RSU2 and other communities that we now serve at KnowledgeWorks, kids will say, you know what, Mr. Hammonds, I'm just not feeling it today. You know, you said I can learn at my own pace. Today is not my pace. Right? So personalized learning and competency isn't about allowing flexibility on time so that we coddle kids. We provide flexibility on time so that we can accelerate learning, so that we can create deeper learning opportunities for them. And that competency and that mastery is what does that. Okay? Second, unless the kids explicitly know what's expected of them, we're doing them a disservice. Okay? Many of you talk about agency. I heard it a lot throughout this morning. I'm taking notes on you all, learning from you all. Again, remember, my title is Chief Learning Officer, so I get to learn from you guys. And we can't do agency really well unless we're putting the expectations out there. And for the superintendents and principals in the room, the same could be said for your staffs and your teams. Be crystal clear about the expectations you're setting and empower and teach kids, community, and educators on how to access those and how to leverage those expected outcomes. You can't do that unless it's crystal clear and transparent. Here's a tricky one. So how do we make assessment meaningful? We can't make assessment meaningful unless that second bullet's in place. And imagine this. Here's the first non-bloodletting strategy. What if we only tested kids or provide opportunities for kids to demonstrate their knowledge when we knew they were ready to do so? Right? What if you were able to tell a kid, and Jeff's right in front of me, so I keep picking on Jeff, but if I told Jeff, I'm only going to give you the test when I know you're ready for it. And you know what the really great thing that happens from that is kids will come to you and say, I'm ready for the test, and here's the evidence to demonstrate why. Or if you have those first two bullets in place, the really interesting part is kids will say, hey, because I know you want me to reach competency at this level and this is what it looks like, what if I did it this way instead of the test? Okay, those three things have to be in place. Plus, when those things are in place, we can start to think differently about the supports and interventions that we provide them. We can be much more prescriptive in a great way, as in diagnosing what their needs are, so that we can hyper-focus the intensive intervention. So again, we can accelerate learning for that child. Key piece. So if we're doing RTI now with these other pieces in place, we can accelerate that process. It's not just about setting systemic interventions because we know these interventions work for the whole. It's about establishing an intervention because we know it works for that child. And it's what they need at that time. Last one, I think, yes. So the outcomes emphasize competencies. And here's the other piece. And the Keynote team, I was just in their session, so that's why I'm referencing them a lot. They said the easy part is to start with the academic competencies, and that's absolutely the truth, right? Many of us are already teaching the standards, whether they're Common Core or another national-based set of standards, right? We're starting from a place there, and it's really easy for us to establish a continuum of learning based around those standards that are competency-based. It's really easy to scaffold them. Actually, I shouldn't say it's easy, but at least you know what you're semi-doing, right? The harder part is when you put in competencies around the skills and dispositions you want kids leaving your learning community with. Right? So many of us in our strategic designs, the ones that I was a part of and the ones that I help support now with the team, we always highlight dispositions that we want our kids graduating our high schools with. Almost every learning community does that. But how do you do that in a way where you can nurture the acquisition and the development of those dispositions from the time they enter to the time they leave? Here's a really interesting concept. In Cincinnati, which is where our organization is based, in Cincinnati, they start to meet with expecting parents to say, what are the skills, knowledge, and dispositions that you want your kids to have as a parent? And then how can we support you as they grow into our preschool programs and into our elementary programs and ultimately into our high school programs? Now, they're just starting with those conversations, but how wonderful is that? Where they're talking about not just the academics that their kids are going to be held to or expected to learn or will be nurtured in their learning process for the content, but how might we be partners in helping you to develop the child or the human being that you want your child to be? Really cool things, hard work, but these 5 things, definition of personalized learning competency. This does not mean, let me just put it out there, this does not mean you do it all at once, okay? Remember these conditions? Well, I didn't highlight, I'll give it to you later. Where you start on this journey for personalized learning competency will be unique to you. Where each of you start will be unique, but how you make these 5 principles alive within those 10 conditions is what's key. All right. So I have the real pleasure of going to, in fact, I was just in my own legislature in Maine 2 days ago, and I got a call and people are saying, hey, Virgil, can you come in and talk about what's happening across the country? Because people are asking us, they feel like Maine's the only state, right? And here are the things that they're saying. And the funny part is that legislator, I could put her name with other legislators' names in states across the country. Because here's what people are saying or asking. Who else is on this journey? I feel like we're alone in this game. Right, Greg, I think you're still in here somewhere, or you might have been in here somewhere. In his session, he showed a map, and I'll show that here in a second. But I don't want technology taking the place of our teachers. As a leader and community member, hey, I don't feel like I'm a part of our schools anymore. How can I be a part of our schools? And lastly, being policy wonky, what does our new administration think about this? Right? And what about higher ed? You know, those guys never change. Those are the things we hear in these hearings. It's the same, just different faces, different voices. So let's talk about a little bit. Where is it happening? So Greg in his session, he showed a map. iNACL is a technology and policy organization that really helps the federal government really understand, state governments understand what's happening across the map in respect to personalized learning and competency. And so they built out this map, and it doesn't show up so great here on this colors, but if you look on the two screens on the end, the red states are the advanced states. They have policies in place that really let learning communities design around personalized learning and competency, right? They put the conditions in place. The green states, the yellow states are emerging states, so they're doing some pretty cool things. The green states are developing states, and the white states, no shaming, the white states just don't have things in place yet. Okay, they're just not there. But the really interesting part is, and I didn't put it in here because I didn't do that, but the really interesting part is 5 years ago, there were 6 states on this map. And look at it now. So big part again of all of these states and educators like you all and communities like those that you live and serve in are all thinking about different strategies, different entry points, different journeys, different resources that they can utilize to make this vision real in their communities. Right? So if you need help reaching out, there are friends just over your border, and there are friends especially within, as we can see today. So this is alive, and this is not, so how many, let me just get a quick formative assessment. How many of you have started down this road? You've done something to implement already in your learning community. For those that have raised your hand, or even for those that did not, how many of you heard in your learning community that I don't want you experimenting with my children? This is not an experiment, folks, it's a movement. Look at this. This is the future of education in the United States. The technology piece. So we put the technology together, and I don't know why the fonts are different, sorry about that. But we put technology with teaching. It's amazing how we can accelerate learning and deepen learning, right? Technology is not a demon. Right? So in Maine, it's a 1-to-1 state. There's actually subsidy in place in Maine for all middle school students to have a device, and the state issues subsidy for you to lease a device for each of your middle school students. And you have the option to do that with your high school students, and they give you partial subsidy for your high school students to do that. But what people say in Maine at the legislature is you gave these kids these laptops or these iPads or these other devices, and all they do is they're on their computers constantly, and they don't listen, or they're accessing curriculum and instruction on these devices, and the teachers don't mean anything. It's a way to get rid of teachers. It's a complete opposite. When you combine technology effectively, as stated here in these bullets, combine it with awesome instruction, and again, those clear expectations, those clear, well-defined competencies, and you give kids access to the world through technology, it's amazing what happens. It's incredible what happens. They far surpass our expectations. But the implementation of technology, Andy, right? We talked earlier, has to be purposeful. It's not just a matter about putting a device in front of a child or a tool, a tech tool in front of a child and say, go run. Just like with instruction and assessment, it has to be purposeful and meaningful. We have to think about how we can leverage what technology brings us to support the unique needs of each child. Earlier, many of you talked about learning communities, and really, for us at KnowledgeWorks, we see personalized learning competency as that equity lever for communities. But it requires us to bring everyone to this table. And I'm going to be very honest with you all and just push a little button here and say, if we are establishing as learning communities meetings for community stakeholders to come to us and give us feedback or be a part of the design process, that's not enough. Because there are too many groups within our communities that don't feel like they can be a part of the table, where it's out of their reach because they've never been invited and they've never been included. And that's hard, right? The reason for this visual, many folks feel like, hey, I got the invite, that's great, but no one's hearing me. So we talk often about the transformation from school districts to learning communities, and you've heard me say learning communities a lot. It becomes a learning community when your school system, your schools, your district, your teachers, and what happens with learning now transcends school walls. And everyone becomes a part of the learning ecosystem. It's not, decisions on learning are not just something that happens within our schools, but happens throughout our community. And that cannot happen unless we engage our community partners and then we invite people that have not been to this table before to be a part of the learning process, and we truly engage and empower them to provide us with feedback, with ideas, and with opportunities to be a part of the solution when it comes to learning and supporting all kids. One big piece here, I'll just let this sit with you. So the real hard part for us as a country is we're pretty divided, right? We don't always feel comfortable in all situations. And this is going to, remember that meta theme culture? This is not just about culture within our school walls, in our classrooms, but our culture as a community. And how do we nurture that so that we truly are talking about the unique needs, not just of every one of our kids, but every one of our community members. And the hard part is, you know you've made it when someone says, hey, I can't make the meeting, but I gave my ideas to my neighbor who's going to be there. And by the way, my neighbor doesn't have kids in the system. Equity includes everybody and gives everyone that shot. Let me give you two stories here. How much time do I have? Holy smokes, I'm almost out of time. So what about higher ed? Let me give you two examples of two kiddos, one from Lindsay, one from RSU2. So Dulce Diaz, who's on your left, just graduated from UCLA, but she's the first kid in her family to actually finish school in the United States. The first to graduate with a high school diploma, the first to learn English, and the very first to settle on mortgages and bills because she was the head of the household when it came to all of those things. And she was a freshman when we started this work at Lindsay. She was still learning English. It was pretty rocky. She was reading at a lower level. She was doing pretty well at school, and all of a sudden we raised the bar. Everyone must reach competency. And it was pretty amazing to watch her growth. It was inspiring, even to this day when I think about her. I talked to her last night, and I said, hey, I'm going to share your story, and we started to talk. And from her to go from someone that was doing pretty okay in school, but was growing and was growing quickly, and learning was accelerating. This competency piece was really challenging her, but she was rising to that challenge. In her senior year, I'll never forget when we got the call to my office, and this probably has happened with some of you, but knowing Dulce's story and her family's story, I got the call to say she was a Gates Millennium Scholar. And this is when we had gone through the transition. All kids are scored on 1 to 4. All kids are only moved based on competency. It's not about the time. It's about what you learned and how you demonstrated that. And showing that, and the thought of her going to college, the money was not there for her to go to college. She was really worried about that. And one of her teachers said, hey, Dulce, you should apply for this. Your story is amazing. You should apply for this. She goes, I have no shot at it. She applied. She got it. Do people know what Gates Millennium Scholarship is? $250,000. Covers everything. She's just now, she told me last night she's applying to USC's Educational Policy Leadership Program. Really cool, right? RSU 2, Emily Lavasser. Emily is a single child with her dad, and they live in one of RSU 2's communities. And we come in and we through the design of the community, and Emily was one of the kiddos in that design process, says, hey, this is great because you know what? I've really school's gotten kind of stale. And here's what I want to do. I want to make school accessible to kids with disabilities, but I want to make it accessible utilizing everything that Maine has to offer. I want to make school in the woods. I want to make school in our surroundings, in our beautiful environment in Maine. How do I make that possible? And so this whole idea of personalized learning and having her prove her competency in ways that inspire her, she applied all of her learning, all of her competencies towards that vision. Everything was about creating learning opportunities outside of school in the woods of Maine. She graduated. She said, I need to do this, and I do this quickly because kids are depending on me. She finished in 2.5 years. She started at Unity College in Maine when she was 17 years old, and she is now a junior at Unity Maine. And that's one of the programs that she started. And that's her father and her walking across one of the first bridges. This is about inspiring, empowering kids, right? Even when the impossible and the vision seems so fragile, making that possible. I'm going to skip because I want to show you a video, and I'm going to take 5 minutes of your break. I hope you're okay with that. I'm not going to share this little guy's story. I'm going to share a video with you, and hopefully it's loud enough for you to hear. Come on. Can you guys hear that? No? Oh, put my mic there. You guys are brilliant. Andrew, come and help me. Yeah. Okay, mic.
Now it's clear we long for, learn to dream, find, explore. Every journey brings us home, a story all our own. Finding purpose, meaning all, uncovering a wider scope. Everyone contributes what they come to know. Vision from below. Always have the hearts in mind. We know it takes the village to build the bridge for our side. Anytime, any place, any place, when God knows our place. It's our time, our place, our place. It's choice and push we co-create. Anytime, any place, any place, when God knows our place. It's our time, our place, our place. Choice and push we co-create. Taking risks without fear, learn and guide peer to peer. We all fall before we walk. Let's walk our talk. The way we think Sunshine, my place, Sundays. Anytime, any place, any place. Good for God knows how to race. Sunshine, my place, Sundays. Trust and mercy for me. Anytime, any place, any place. Good for God knows how to race. Sunshine, my place, Sundays. Trust and mercy for me.
So as that's finishing up, that was Vermont's way of saying we got to do things differently. And so there were a number of school systems in Vermont that had started down this journey, and the school districts were asking the kids, how do we talk about this? And they said, let us figure that out. So the kids did this. What a great way to end. Thank you for doing the amazing innovations that you're doing. Please share your work with your colleagues, with your peers, and with those across the country. Thanks for doing what you do. Take care.
Another round of applause for Virgil Hammonds. Thank you so much, Virgil, for sharing that. And I know that we want to get you to the next session on time. So I am just going to say one thing. It's getting bright out there and warm. It's getting a little warm in here, so I'll let you guys get out. But man, it's getting bright. Man, if only we had some cool shades. Ooh. So there are some PLCon 17 sunglasses right outside the door here in the outside the grand room. So go ahead and grab a pair for yourself and enjoy the rest of the conference.